Hello Poke Bros, welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be continuing my black and white anime rewrite. If you didn't watch part 1, you should, but I'll still recap just in case. In episode 1, Ash traveled to Unova with Professor Oak, where he met Professor Juniper and two new trainers, Trip and Hilbert. He battled both, winning both. Also, Ash was gifted an Oshawa. On Route 1, Ash caught a P-Dub and met Bianca. Then, Ash battled N in Accumula Town. Ash won his first gym badge in Striaton City, and that's where we pick up today. We would open with our trio of Ash, Bianca, and Silent at the Pokémon Center in Striaton. The trio would be discussing their next course of action should be. When Professor Juniper would call Bianca, she would request that Bianca meet with her associate, Professor Fennel, at the Dream Yard. Bianca would accept, and the trio would decide that their next destination was the Dream Yard. The trio would arrive at the Dream Yard, but would be shocked by what they see. Team Plasma would be abusing some wild Nuna while they had Fennel held captive. Ash would head to fight the grunts, but Silent would tell him to wait, saying that it's smart if they call the police. Ash would tell Silent that will take too long and that he can't stand seeing Pokemon get hurt. Bianca would agree, and Ash and Bianca would then jump into action, challenging the grunts to a battle. The grunts would send in a Patrat and Purloin, while Ash and Bianca would use P-Dub and Lillipup. At first, the duo would struggle, as they've only known each other for a little while, so they're not on the same page in the double battle, leading to their Pokemon taking a lot of unnecessary hits. The Purloin would land a powerful Fairy Swipes on Lillipup, but this would be what got the trainers on the same page, and Lillipup and Pidove would then land a Gust takedown combo, defeating the Purloin. The Patrat would then land a Fierce Bite on Lillipup, however Pidove would then finish him off with a Quick Attack. The two grunts would then run off. Ash would untie Fennel, while Bianca gets some pictures of the Munna that were being abused. Silent would then explain to Bianca that Munna are known as the Dream Pokemon, and that they can create dreams in people's heads. Fennel would then confirm what Silent had said, being impressed with his knowledge. Fennel would then explain how she had come here to collect some dream mist from the Munna. However, after arriving, she was attacked by the Plasma Grunts. Fennel would collect the dream mist, and the group would begin to leave. However, one of the Munna showed interest in Bianca, following her. Ash would tell Bianca that he thinks that the Munna wants to join her, and Bianca would then toss a Pokeball, adding the Munna to her team. We would then see our trio on Route 3, traveling towards Nacrene City. While on the road to Nacrene, our trio would come across a Pokemon daycare. Silent would then ask if they could head inside, as he's interested in the daycare process. Ash and Bianca would be okay with that, and they would then head inside. Once inside, the daycare lady would greet the trio. Silent then asks how the daycare works, and the lady would gladly explain. She would tell the trio how here they care for all different types of Pokemon, and that sometimes these Pokemon have eggs, and they raise the eggs, then returning them to the trainers. Everyone would be interested, especially Silent. Just then, a Cottony would come barging through the door, with a trainer following close behind. The trainer would try to grab the Cottony, but she would continue to bounce around. The trainer would then give up, saying, "This is useless. She's never going to listen." Ash would then kneel down, extending a hand towards the Cottony, filled with poffins. Ash then says, "You can't force a Pokemon to trust you. You have to build that trust. Maybe try being gentler." The Cottony would then crawl up onto Ash's shoulder, then nuzzling up against his head. The daycare lady would be impressed, as would Silent. Ash would then return the Cottony to the trainer, and despite being upset she was leaving Ash, the Cottony would be much calmer. Ash, Bianca, and Silent would then begin to head out. However, Ash would then be stopped by the daycare lady. The lady would explain how she was impressed with Ash's care and kindness towards Pokemon, and that she believes that he is the perfect trainer to care for this Pokemon egg. Ash would gladly accept, then putting the egg in his bag. Silent would be a little upset he didn't get the egg. Meanwhile, Bianca would be excited, hoping that she can take a picture of whatever hatches out of it. After a short travel through the rest of Route 3, our trio of Ash, Bianca, and Silent would arrive in Nacrene City. Silent would suggest that they get their team sealed at the Pokémon Center. However, at that moment, Bianca would run off, saying, Oh my god, it's been so long! After Ash and Silent catch up to Bianca, they would see her next to a tall, black-haired boy. Bianca would then say, Guys, this is my friend Sharon. We both started our journeys at the same time. Sharon would then introduce himself as an aspiring trainer. Ash would ask how many badges Sharon had. He would reveal that he had already earned 5 gym badges in the year that he's been traveling. Ash, being excited by the thought of a tough battle, would challenge Sharon to a fight, and he would accept. The boys would agree on a 2-on-2 battle. Ash would lead Pidove, while Sharon would select Boldore. Pidove would try to damage Boulder with gusts, but his tough exterior would negate most of the damage. Ash would tell Pidove to get close and attack with a quick attack. However, she would then be left susceptible to a rock blast, doing severe damage. Pidove would try to attack with another gust, but still it wouldn't do much damage. Sharon would then call for another rock blast. Pidove would try to dodge, but she is too weakened from getting hit by most of the rocks and falling to the ground, fainting. Ash would return Pidove, telling her she did a great job. He would then send in Oshawott. Sharon would quickly call for an iron defense, strengthening Buldore's defense. Ash would call for Oshawott to use a water gun, and it would connect, doing big damage to Buldore. Buldore would retaliate with a headbutt. However, Oshawott would squirt water to the ground, propelling himself up to dodge. He would then fire off a water gun, hitting Buldore head-on and taking him out. Sharon would return Buldore before saying, And now it's time for my ace. Go, do it! Oshawott would then lock eyes with his evolved form, ready to battle. Oshawott would charge him with a tackle, but Duat would dodge, then strike him with a razor shell, doing big damage. This would continue on like this, with Oshawott trying to get close, with Duat dodging almost every attack. Just then, Duat would charge him with a razor shell, and Oshawott would attempt to dodge, while Ash would call for a water gun, and this combo would transform into the move Aqua Jet. This move would help Oshawott out. However, he still didn't have great control over it, leading to him being hit by a razor shell and fainting. Oshawott would then become sworn rivals with Duat. Ash would return Oshawott, then heading to talk to Charon. Wow, Charon, you're strong, but that was a great battle, thank you. Charon would thank Ash too, then setting off. Bianca and Silent would check on Ash, making sure he was fine, but Ash would reassure him that he was okay. The trio would then head to the Pokemon Center to get their teams healed. After getting his Pokemon healed, Ash, with Bianca and Silent, would head to the Nacrene City Gym. After arriving, Ash would be a little confused, just seeing a museum. Ash would see a lady giving a group of people a tour of the museum. Ash would want to ask if she knew where the gym leader was, but Silent would tell Ash not to interrupt her. Ash would ignore Silent, then approaching the lady, asking her if she knew where the gym leader was. The lady would introduce herself as Lenora, then telling Ash that she was the gym leader. Ash would ask her for a gym battle, and she would gladly accept, telling the group of people that she was sorry, but the tour would have to end here. Lenora would take Ash to a back room of the museum where the gym was located. The trainers would take their places, and Lenora would tell Ash that their battle would be a 2-on-2 gym battle. She would then throw in her ear to start fighting. Ash would send in Pikachu to battle. Lenora would call for a takedown, but Pikachu would dodge, retaliating with a Thunderbolt. Lenora would continue to call for takedowns, and Pikachu would continue to dodge, landing Thunderbolts in between. However, despite not taking damage, Pikachu would begin to tire himself out from all the dodging. Lenora would then tell Herdier to attack with a Crunch. She would charge in, chomping down on Pikachu, doing big damage. Herdier then charges in with another takedown. However, Ash tells Pikachu to use Volt Tackle. Both Pokemon would charge in, then colliding in the middle. After the collision, both Pokemon would stumble, being very weakened. But Herdier would fall, while Pikachu would stand tall. Lenora would then send in her ace, Watchog. Watchog would attack with a Retaliate, and Pikachu wouldn't be able to dodge, being very weakened from his previous battle. However, the attack would do a lot of damage. Lenora would explain that Retaliate does more damage if another Pokemon just fainted. Pikachu would then fire off a Thunderbolt, hitting the Watchog dead on. Watchog would retaliate with a Crunch, finishing Pikachu off. Ash would grab Pikachu, telling him he did a great job. Ash would grab a Pokeball off his belt, then whispering to the ball, "It's all on you now." Ash would toss the Pokeball, sending in Oshawott. Watchog would charge him with Retaliate, but Ash would tell Oshawott to dodge with Aqua Jet. He would do so, however the Aqua Jet would be out of control, sending Oshawott flying around the gym, eventually crashing into the wall. Watchog would then land a powerful Hyper Fang on Oshawott. Ash would tell Oshawott to keep his distance and attack with Water Guns. This would work, as every time Watchog would attack with a Hyper Fang, Oshawott would dodge, then firing off a Water Gun. However, Ash again would tell Oshawott to attempt an Aqua Jet. It would be to the same effect, with Oshawott having no control. Except this time, Ash would realize that Oshawott's eyes were closed, while he uses the attack. However, while making this observation, Watchog will land a powerful Hyper Fang on Oshawott, leaving him very weakened. Ash, now knowing Oshawott's weakness, would tell him to attack with Aqua Jet, but to keep his eyes open. Oshawott would do so, and while still not perfect, it would be controlled enough to land and would do enough damage to defeat the Watchog. Ash would cheer, and Oshawott would do his little dance, happy with his win. Bianca would get a nice pic of Ash and Oshawott. Lenore would congratulate Ash, telling him this was the most exciting battle she's had in a while, then giving Ash his second Unova badge, the basic badge. Silent and Bianca would congratulate Ash on his win, both surprised by how quickly he adapted to learning Oshawott's weakness. Just then, an assistant at the museum would come charging into their gym room looking for Lenora. "Miss Lenora, something's happening. A group of people are stealing the dragon skull." Lenora would be shocked, jumping to investigate. Ash, Silent, and Bianca would follow. After making it to the main room of the museum, everyone would see Team Plasma stealing the dragon skull before running off. Ash would then promise to Lenora that he'll get it back. And that's all for today, Pokebros. How did you like today's episode? Did you like Ash's battles? Or what do you think is in the Pokemon egg? Any questions or criticisms? Leave in the comments below. Also, if there's a Pokemon you'd like someone to catch, and you give a good story moment, I might add it. But don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye, Pokebros.